The evening hums with a steady rhythm in Earl's Steakhouse, a beacon of sophistication in the heart of the town. It's a Friday night, and every table is occupied, the smell of sizzling steaks and expensive wine filling the air. Waiters glide between tables, carrying trays with precision, while soft jazz plays in the background. The lighting is dim, casting a golden glow over the polished wood and leather seats. Earl, standing near the entrance, surveys it all with quiet satisfaction. His restaurant is not just a place to eat, it's a symbol of status, and he takes pride in that. His presence commands respect, every detail meticulously overseen by his sharp eyes. He moves through the restaurant with practiced ease, exchanging pleasantries with his wealthier clientele. His smile is warm, his words smooth, but behind that charm lies something colder. With the regulars, mostly well-off businessmen and their wives, he's the picture of hospitality. But as he passes by his staff, mostly working-class locals, his tone shifts ever so slightly. His words remain polite, but there's a subtle distance, a quiet reminder of the lines he's drawn in his mind. When he greets a young black couple at one of the tables, his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. They're an exception here, and though he serves them with the same outward politeness, there's a flicker of discomfort beneath his professional veneer. Earl has built his life around maintaining an image, and part of that image is the unsaid belief that certain people belong in certain places. His restaurant, he believes, is not meant for everyone. He's careful, though, he never says it outright. It's in the way he pauses before addressing certain customers, the slight change in his demeanor when interacting with those he subconsciously views as outsiders. His staff knows it too, but no one says anything. The money's good, the tips are better, and the unspoken rules keep the peace. For Earl, it's simply the way things are. Outside the restaurant, the town itself is a picture of small-town America. Quaint, tree-lined streets with neatly kept homes and local businesses. There's an old-world charm to it, but beneath the surface, there's a quiet tension. The town is split in many ways, but most notably along racial lines. The white population, more affluent, occupies the nicer parts of town and frequents places like Earl's Steakhouse. The black community, while present, tends to stick to their side of town, a separation that's understood but rarely discussed. Earl's Steakhouse is a symbol of this divide. White and wealthy, it's a place where the town's elite gather, while others know it's not meant for them. The segregation in the town isn't overt, it's woven into the fabric of everyday life. Schools, churches, even the local bars cater to different groups. Earl's Steakhouse has a reputation, known for its quality food but also for the kind of people it attracts. It's not that black residents aren't welcome, it's just that they rarely come. Everyone knows their place, even if no one openly acknowledges it. As Earl makes his rounds, he catches snippets of conversation from a table of regulars. They're talking about a wealthy out-of-towner who's been buying up property in the area. There's some concern among the group, whispers of change coming to the town, of new money and new people. Earl, overhearing this, smirks to himself. His steakhouse is too established, too entrenched in the town's identity for anyone to threaten it. He's confident that no one could challenge his place, no matter how much money they throw around. The idea of someone buying him out, or competing with him, is laughable. He brushes off the conversation, turning his attention back to his guests, dismissing the thought of any real change. Later in the evening, as the rush begins to wind down, Earl's phone rings. It's his manager, mentioning a reservation request from a couple visiting town. They're new, likely tourists, looking for a spot for dinner. Earl barely registers the information. It's just another couple, nothing out of the ordinary. He makes a mental note but doesn't give it much thought. There's no reason to. Business is steady, the restaurant is thriving, and as far as Earl is concerned, everything is under control. For now. David and Vanessa step out of their car, poised and composed. Both are elegantly dressed, their attire understated but sophisticated, fitting for a night out at one of the town's most prestigious restaurants. As they approach the entrance, there's a calmness to them, a confidence that they belong anywhere they choose to be. Earl notices them immediately from his spot near the hostess stand. A flicker of discomfort passes through him, almost instinctual, as he takes in the sight of the couple. His smile doesn't waver, but inside, he's already forming judgments. They don't fit his image of the typical customer. His unease grows as they reach the door, his internal bias coloring everything about this moment, though he can't quite pinpoint why. He greets them with his usual charm, but his words carry an almost imperceptible edge. Leading them into the dining room, Earl quickly scans the available tables. There are plenty of open spots in the center of the room, prime locations with a view of the bustling restaurant. Instead, Earl gestures toward a small table in the far corner, near the kitchen. It's cramped, dark, and far from the vibrant atmosphere enjoyed by his usual clientele. David and Vanessa exchange a glance but don't protest, gracefully taking their seats. They are aware of what's happening but choose to remain polite, giving Earl the benefit of the doubt. Meanwhile, Earl silently justifies his decision, convincing himself that the table selection has nothing to do with their race. But deep down, he knows better. As the evening progresses, the couple continues to experience the subtle weight of Earl's prejudice. Service is slow, noticeably so, while tables around them are receiving their orders with efficiency. Earl has instructed the waitstaff to take their time with the couple, telling himself that it's no big deal. After all, it's a busy night, and delays happen. But as he watches David and Vanessa from afar, his discomfort grows. He sees their sophistication, their poise, and it grates on him in ways he can't fully articulate. He tells himself that they don't belong here, not in the same way his regular customers do. His prejudice, once hidden behind a smile, is slowly coming to the surface, pushing him to justify his mistreatment of them with every passing moment. Vanessa, noticing the disparity in service, calmly waves over a passing server. She politely asks if they can be moved to a better table, one of the several empty ones she's seen since they arrived. Her voice is soft but firm, betraying no anger, only a quiet request for fairness. The server, clearly uncomfortable, explains that the tables are reserved, though Vanessa knows this isn't true. Earl, overhearing the exchange, quickly steps in. He doesn't outright deny her request, but his tone is condescending, dismissive. "I'm afraid those tables are taken," he says, though they both know otherwise. David, sensing the growing tension, remains calm. He leans forward, his voice measured, and politely asks to speak with the manager. He is unaware that Earl is the owner, assuming, like most people would, that someone else must be in charge of running the place. Earl, insulted by the request, feels his control slipping. The prejudice he's worked so hard to mask begins to seep into his words, and without missing a beat, he steps forward, asserting his authority. "I'm the owner," he says, his voice sharper than intended. There's a pause. David, taken aback by the escalation but still composed, explains that they're unhappy with the way they've been treated. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. His tone is firm, but not confrontational. But to Earl, this is a direct challenge, and he can't hold back any longer. His frustration bubbles over, and before he realizes what he's saying, he blurts out, "Maybe this place just isn't for people like you." The words hang in the air, sharp and unmistakable. David and Vanessa, stunned but not surprised, exchange a glance. They stand without a word. Their quiet dignity in the face of such blatant disrespect is stark against Earl's growing anger. They leave without causing a scene, without raising their voices, their exit marked only by the weight of what has just occurred. The restaurant falls silent for a moment, the eyes of Earl's employees and a few customers fixed on the scene that just unfolded. Some of the staff look shocked, others seem uncomfortable but say nothing, unwilling to intervene in what they've just witnessed. Earl stands there, his chest heaving, feeling oddly justified in his actions. In his mind, he's done nothing wrong. He believes he's defended his establishment, unaware that the consequences of this night will ripple far beyond what he can see. For now, all he feels is a sense of control, blind to the storm brewing just beyond his door. The next morning, Earl sits in his office, feeling a sense of calm. The restaurant is running like clockwork, the kitchen humming, servers prepping for another busy day. He leans back in his chair, confident that last night's incident with the couple is already forgotten. In his mind, It was a small bump, nothing significant. He feels no guilt or remorse, rationalizing that he was just protecting his business, his image. As far as he's concerned, the matter is closed. He glances at the bookings for the weekend, still full, still thriving. Earl reassures himself that everything will continue as normal. Outside his office, however, things are stirring. The staff is abuzz with whispers about what happened the previous night. A few servers have seen social media posts cropping up, subtle mentions of the restaurant's mistreatment of a well-dressed couple. It's small for now, but the conversation is growing. People are starting to talk, and it's not long before the news begins to spread beyond the staff. Earl remains unaware, still locked in the bubble of his own certainty. As Earl steps out into the restaurant, one of his waiters nervously approaches him. The young man hesitates, clearly unsure of how to break the news. "Earl, that couple from last night, you know who they were?" Earl frowns, brushing off the question with a casual wave. "Does it matter?" But the waiter persists. "It does. The guy, David, is the CEO of one of the biggest fine dining chains in the country. And his wife, Vanessa? She's a top lawyer, known for taking on discrimination cases." Earl's face freezes. He feels a tightening in his chest, the confidence draining from him. He had no idea who they were, and now, the weight of his actions begins to settle in. Earl's mind races. How could he not have known? He prides himself on recognizing influential people, and yet, he completely missed who David and Vanessa were. Worse, they're not just regular customers. They hold significant power and influence in exactly the circles that matter. As if to confirm his growing fears, one of the waitresses shows him a social media post from a local blogger who witnessed the incident. The post is gaining traction, people commenting and sharing their own experiences of subtle mistreatment at Earl's steakhouse. Earl feels the panic rising. His actions from the previous night, once so easily dismissed, now loom large. His mind reels, searching for damage control, but the situation is already slipping from his grasp. As the day progresses, the impact becomes impossible to ignore. Reservation cancellations start rolling in, one after another. Longtime customers are calling, citing what they've read online. Earl's phone doesn't stop buzzing. The town's social media is lighting up with outrage, and a few of the local news outlets have picked up the story. It's not just the incident anymore, it's the restaurant's entire reputation that's being questioned. The veneer of sophistication Earl worked so hard to build is crumbling, piece by piece, under the weight of his own actions. His once thriving establishment is now facing a very public reckoning. In the midst of this chaos, David and Vanessa are quietly making their moves. They don't react with public outrage or seek immediate revenge. Instead, they are calm, strategic. Vanessa's legal expertise comes into play, and through subtle channels, they begin the process of acquiring the land on which Earl's restaurant sits. It's a calculated move, one that catches Earl completely off guard. While he's busy trying to salvage his public image, David and Vanessa are working behind the scenes, putting pressure where it matters most, on Earl's business itself. It's not about lawsuits or social media feuds for them. It's about power and control. Toward the end of the day, Earl receives a letter from a legal firm. Confused, he opens it, scanning the lines quickly. The letter informs him of David and Vanessa's intent to purchase the land beneath his restaurant, effectively putting Earl's entire operation at risk. It's a power play that hits him harder than any public backlash. Earl, who once believed his restaurant was untouchable, now faces the very real possibility of losing everything. Stunned, he drops the letter on his desk, the full weight of his actions finally sinking in. Earl is frantic, feeling the pressure mount from every side. In a last-ditch effort to salvage his reputation, he decides to issue a public apology. Standing in front of a camera, he stumbles through his words, trying to mask his discomfort. He apologizes for the misunderstanding, but doesn't acknowledge the deeper issue of his racism. His tone is defensive, lacking genuine remorse, and anyone watching can see through it. The apology, instead of repairing the damage, only deepens the divide. Some in the town take his words at face value, eager to move on, but for many others, it rings hollow. Earl still doesn't see the full extent of the harm he caused, and his refusal to confront his prejudice is clear. Behind the scenes, the ripple effect is hitting his staff hard. A few key employees, disillusioned by the way Earl handled the situation, decide to quit. They can no longer work for someone whose actions reflect values they don't agree with. Others stay on, clinging to the hope that the storm will pass and things will return to normal. But the atmosphere in the restaurant shifts. There's an unspoken tension in the air. With every shift feeling heavier, the staff divided between those who want to move on and those who are deeply affected by the scandal. The easy camaraderie they once shared is gone, replaced by quiet uncertainty. The town itself is caught in the middle of the fallout. Longtime residents, many of whom have been loyal patrons of Earl's Steakhouse for years, find themselves forced to pick a side. Some rally behind Earl, defending him and claiming that he's been unfairly targeted by the social media outrage. They argue that one bad night shouldn't erase years of good service. Others, however, are not as forgiving. They call for a boycott of the restaurant, seeing Earl's actions as a reflection of the larger racial issues that have always simmered under the surface of the town. The incident opens up old wounds, and conversations that have been avoided for years now dominate local discussions. The divide in the community is undeniable, mirroring the racial tensions that have long gone unaddressed. Meanwhile, David and Vanessa remain calm and focused. They continue to push forward with their plans, meeting quietly with local officials and influential business owners. Their presence is now unmistakable in the town's business scene, and it's clear that they are serious about their investments. They begin acquiring other properties in the area, not just for the sake of revenge, but to establish a foothold in the local economy. Their moves are calculated and deliberate, expanding their influence while Earl scrambles to contain his losses. They don't need to fight Earl directly. Every step they take speaks louder than words, slowly reshaping the power dynamics of the town. One afternoon, as Earl sits in his office, exhausted from the relentless pressure, a formal letter arrives. It's from David and Vanessa's legal team, offering him a choice: sell the restaurant outright or remain as a tenant under their ownership. The offer is clear and professional, but the weight of it is crushing. Earl is left staring at the letter, realizing that the future of his business is no longer in his hands. He has to make a decision, whether to swallow his pride and stay on as a tenant, or walk away from the empire he built, now crumbling under the weight of his own actions. Earl sits in his office, staring at the contract in front of him. The decision weighs heavily on him, but deep down, he knows there's no alternative. His business is hemorrhaging money, and with the mounting backlash and empty tables, his once thriving steakhouse is barely staying afloat. David and Vanessa's offer is his only way to keep the restaurant, even if it means surrendering ownership. Reluctantly, he signs the agreement. Earl knows the power is no longer in his hands, but at least he'll still be part of the business, even if only as a tenant under their ownership. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but his pride has already taken a back seat to survival. With the change in ownership, the restaurant undergoes a transformation. David and Vanessa waste no time implementing their vision. The staff is retrained with a focus on inclusivity, professionalism, and respect. The menu, once rigid and traditional, is revamped to reflect a more diverse range of flavors, attracting a broader clientele. The atmosphere shifts from one of exclusivity to one that's welcoming to all. Earl watches from the sidelines as his beloved steakhouse is reshaped, and though he struggles with the loss of control, he knows these changes are necessary. His role has been reduced to that of an employee, his influence diminished. He's no longer the face of the restaurant, and for the first time in years, he's not in charge. As the weeks go by, Earl begins to confront the reality of his situation. Working under David and Vanessa, he starts to reflect on his past actions, not just the incident with them but the way he's run his business for years. Slowly, it dawns on him that his deeply ingrained prejudices were not only morally wrong but also held him back from success. He sees how David and Vanessa's leadership is elevating the restaurant in ways he never could. He watches the staff flourish under the new management, and realizes that diversity and inclusivity are not threats but strengths. This realization is humbling for Earl, and though it doesn't come all at once, it begins to change him. He starts listening more, learning from those around him, and accepting that his worldview was limited. His growth is slow but genuine, and for the first time in a long while, he feels a sense of purpose in becoming better, not just for himself, but for those around him. The town, too, begins to evolve. David and Vanessa's presence ushers in new business opportunities, bringing a fresh energy to the community. Their influence extends beyond the restaurant, encouraging local business owners to rethink their own practices. Conversations that were once avoided about race and inclusion are now being had openly. The town's long-standing racial divides, once so deeply ingrained, are slowly starting to heal. The restaurant becomes a symbol of this change, a place where old boundaries are broken and new possibilities are created. It's not an overnight transformation, but there's a palpable shift in the air. In the final moments, Earl stands inside the restaurant, watching as the dining room buzzes with a new life. He's no longer at the helm, but there's a peace in his acceptance of that. He's working under David and Vanessa's leadership, a part of something bigger than himself. The restaurant has become more than just a place to eat, it's a beacon of change for the town, a reminder of what's possible when old ways give way to new ideas. Earl, though humbled, has a chance at redemption. He may never fully undo the mistakes of his past, but he's on a path toward understanding and growth. The future, for both him and the town, holds the promise of reconciliation and renewal.